Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this session of moral lessons from the Quran. We will be discussing verses from the Quran which have a moral message. We have been discussing passages in the past sessions, and today also I have selected a relevant passage. And this is something which be very known to you as well, because this relates to the communal conduct and social etiquette vis-a-vis people when they interact with one another, not only in a manner that constitutes positive relationships with each other, but also in the terms in terms of protecting the integrity of our brethren. So I am referring to the verses of Surah Hujurat, which many of us would be very aware of. Let me just read its text and translation first before you, and then we'll have a short discussion. The words are, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu la yaskhar qawmun min qawmin asa an yakunu khayran minhum wala nisa'un min nisa'in asa an yakunna khayran minhunna wala talmizu anfusakum wala tanabazu bil alqab bi'sal ismul fusuq ba'da al iman wa man lam yatub fa ulaika humuz zalimun. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن إن بعد الظن إثم ولا تجسسوا ولا يغتب بعضكم بعضا أيحب أحدكم أن يأكل لحم أخيه ميتا فكرهتموه واتقوا الله إن الله تواب رحيم. يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. Believers, let not one group of men make fun of another. It is possible that they may fare better than them. And let not women make fun of other women who may perhaps turn out to be better than themselves. And do not defame one another, nor call one another by bad names. Even the name of defiance is bad after faith. And those who do not repent are the ones who are unjust to their souls. Believers, avoid being overly speculative, for some speculations are blatant sin, and do not pry on one another. And no one among you should indulge in backbiting others. Would any one of you like to eat the flesh of his dead brother? So you regarded this to be abhorrent. And keep fearing God. Indeed, God is ever inclined to accepting repentance and is ever merciful. People, we have created you from one man and one woman and divided you into tribes and clans that you might get to know one another. The noblest of you in God's sight is he who is the most God-conscious. Indeed, God is all-knowing and wise. So, my dear participants, you can clearly see how important these instructions are, and they have been mentioned in Surah Hujurat, which is a surah which was revealed at the very end of the Prophet's career, and it was at this time that there were many people surrounding areas who were accepting faith, and mostly the reason for their faith acceptance was that the political force of Islam had become so strong that they thought that it is always in the interest of us to accept religion. So basically it was a political, or generally it can be said that it was not as much as faith in its depth that was accepted, but more of an awe-inspiring measure which was taken by these Bedouin tribes which surrounded in the surrounding areas. And because of the fact that they lacked a lot of education and tarbiyah, so to speak, so these verses actually spell out the conduct they must profess with each other. And it starts off with a very, very important directive. And this is something that we find rampant in many societies even today. And of course, it was there in the times of Prophet Muhammad as well, in his state when, as I said, the Bedouins had accepted faith, seeing the expansion of Islam, and they were induced to accept Islam as a result. So the first thing which is said in these verses is that neither men nor women should make fun of each other. And the reason it is cited in this verse is that asa yakunu khayran minhum. It may well be that in the sight of God they are much better. You make fun of people because you see some weakness in them, some shortcoming, some deficit, and as a result, you crack jokes on such people and mock at them. But this is something which is very derisive. It breaks the hearts of people, especially when you are doing it to deride people, to belittle them, and they are not in a position to joke back at you. So the Quran has said that, well, this is not the right way in which a righteous society can be formed. So it is of essential importance that in all such cases, men and women both have to be on guard. They must not make fun of each other, because at the end of the day, or in the hereafter, as these verses would say, it is in the sight of God, the person who from his inside or her inside would be much better, much higher in his or her piety and his or virtue, and the Almighty would have a tremendous regard for this person. And people here in this world, they joke about such a person or make fun of him or her just because they think that basically there is some shortcoming, there's some deficit, there's something missing in that person, not realizing the fact that from inside that person might be a person whose heart is made of gold, who's professing something so outstanding in character that even the Almighty is full of praise for such a person. So a very important lesson that we have to learn today. And another thing that needs to be understood is that generally what happens is that when the Quran gives such directives, it gives it in the male gender generally and subsumes the female gender under it, thinking that men are addressed and women are automatically understood to be addressed. But here, the Quran, as is the case with some other areas as well, it singles out women as well separately. So men, when they make fun of men, and women, that when they make fun of women, they are mentioned separately. It could have been the fact that a single sentence could have been enough, but seeing the gravity of the situation and seeing the significance that such a behavior can have, or the impact it can have on people, both men and women were mentioned separately. And this is something of a reminder for all of us, because cracking jokes, making fun of each other, especially the person who's not present, is so common a practice amongst us that at times we don't even realize that this is something wrong. So especially in our society, in our social milieu, in our political milieu, in all these backgrounds, we need to understand that making fun of people, and of course here, as I said, the purpose of making fun is to belittle that person and to mock at that person. This is something which the Almighty does not like at all. And then the verse continues with some other important directives in a very similar vein. So let's just read the remaining part once again, and it says that وَلَا تَلْمِزُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَلَا تَنَابَزُوا بِالْأَلْقَابِ. So تَلْمِزُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ, it would mean that do not defame one another, do not mock at one another, do not address one another in a way that you would like to deride him and to belittle that person in the eyes of other people. So this is something which is done at times by casting aspersions on his or her character, and at times you do it by the wink of your eye or a gesture. So la talmizu anfusakum encompasses not only verbal but also just these gestures which are meant to belittle other people in a way that you start calling them in a way, or addressing them in a way, or mentioning them in a way that totally defames them. And then the verse says, وَلَا تَنَابَزُوا بِالْأَلْقَابِ. Don't address one another by names which of course are very bad, which we keep by actually keeping in view some deficiency of a person. We might call a person a shorty, or any other racist remark would be given in a way because we think that that name or that derisive name describes that person's outer appearance. This is something which is expressly forbidden, and it says la tanabazu bil alqab, do not call each other by these derisive names which might depict their appearance in a way that you would like to make fun of it. And we can see today how often we indulge in all this, let alone what other people are doing. We have to first of all see that this is something that all of us are at some time or the other indulging in, and at times we just go unchecked. So we have to revisit this once again. And the bottom line is that we have to control our tongue. we have to understand that when we speak, it has to do with a lot of things, especially one sentence can break a relationship. One sentence can put an end to it. And one of these sentences or mentions is that you call people by derisive names. At times, people, they don't have the courage to tell you that they don't like it. But believe me, every person has a self-esteem. No one likes to be called with such names. And we should imagine if someone from outside or someone else calls us by these names, how bad we would feel. So it is all the more essential that we are extremely careful in not naming people in this way. So, La talmizu anfusakum wa la tanabazu bil alqab. And then the verse says, Bi'sal ismul fusuqu ba'da al-iman. It says that even the name of defiance is bad after faith. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَتُبْ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. So it is just, the expression here is so strong. The words are that even when you say something, the name of that thing, when you say that, well, as this verse says, that even the name of a sin, even calling something by the name that it describes, is something that you should refrain from. So this is a very, very express way of telling us that how something which is bad in its practice, even taking its name is something that you should stay far away from. So la talmizu anfusakum wa la tanabazu bil alqab bi'sal ismul fusuq. That the name of defiance, even the name of such a disobedience, you just even stay away from such a practice, let alone indulge in it. And then the verse says, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَتُبْ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ, that those who don't desist, and they are the ones who are wrongdoers. And then there is another string of things which the verse mentions, and it says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اجْتَنِبُوا كَثِيرًا مِنَ الظَّنِّ. And it do not indulge overtly in speculation. Let me just share the words with you once again. So it says, La اجْتَنِبُوا كَثِيرًا مِنَ الظَّنِّ. Don't speculate, because some speculations are blatant sin. And do not pry on one another, which is وَلَا تَجَسَّسُوا. So making speculations, prying on one another, of course the understanding here is that the intention is to find some evil from the other person, or to pick on someone's bad habit and to highlight it. So speculating and needless speculation without even having the proper data about a lot of things, we all tend to speculate, and we all tend to believe in hearsay, and we transmit things without even verifying them. So this is pure speculation, and the Quran says, it says that Ya ayyuhallazina amanu ijtanibu kaseeran min adh-dhann, and you refrain from this practice of speculating. And wala tajassasu, do not pry and spy on other people with the intention of finding out some fault or something bad, so that it could satisfy our own selves that yes, well, people have bad habits. So this is a very evil tendency. And then wala yaghtab ba'dukum ba'da, which means that do not backbite. And this is such a common practice in our gatherings that, as I said, that we have stopped even thinking that this is a bad thing. So telling us that the Quran tells us that the extent of its evil is that it is as if you're eating the meat of your dead brother, because the person that you are mentioning with, who might be having some faults, some shortcomings, it's not being denied here, but the way you mention him or her is to make fun of that person, or to belittle that person, to make that person small in the eyes of others, and he's not there to defend himself or herself. And it is here that the Quran says that it's like eating the meat of your dead brother. So it is of utmost importance that we stop indulging in this practice of backbiting. And you can see that the things which are mentioned in this verse, if we try to follow all of them, then it would just perhaps mean that we might have to stay silent for a long period of time, because a lot of things that we utter when we speak belongs to some of these categories. So the Quran is expressly forbidding that. And then finally, a very, I would say it's a huge verse with which this passage ends, and it says, "Inna khalaqnakum min zakarin wa unsa." That, O mankind, we have created you from a single pair, from a single pair of parents, Adam and Eve. And وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. If we have divided you into various tribes and families, it is just for your own recognition. It's not to be taken as a cause of superiority or inferiority. All are equal in the eyes of God. Yes, inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. In the sight of God, the best among you are those who are virtuous, who are God conscious. So it's all the more important to realize that all of us are one human family. There is no question of any superiority, because if we belong to the same progeny, if we are part of the same family, no one can boast himself or herself to become or be superior to the other. And the Quran expressly says that if there is a question of superiority or someone who is better than the other, then that is on the basis of piety. And no one knows who a pious person is except God, because only He can judge from his or her intentions, her inner thoughts, and outward appearance, and all his actions and practices, whether that person is truly a pious person or not. So that is something to be left to God. So this verse gives this very important message that we just cannot judge people in any way. Judging people, whether they are pious or not, is the sole prerogative of God. As far as we are concerned, we must think that all of us are part of this human family. We are global citizens who belong to this human family, and as a result, we have to regard each other with the same respect, and at the same time feel for them the way we would feel for our family. And these are this passage, I would say, is a tremendous has tremendous appeal for all of us, and all the more worthwhile to memorize this passage and keep it in mind and revisit it every now and then, because it's such an important message that it gives us loud and clear, and it shows how religion makes us a well-wisher of every single person that we come across. It does not want us to pose ourselves on others in any way, or make fun of other people, or regard them to be inferior, or to pry in their affairs, or to transmit hearsay, or to indulge in backbiting. In fact, it tells us that all these are sins and evils we must stay away from. Even the name of these sins is something which is despicable. And finally, we have to understand that we are one human family. All of us are equal human beings. No one is a better human being. Yes, he or she would be better in the sight of God if he or she possesses that piety which only God can have true knowledge of. So I would end my talk here, and I'm ready for your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad, for this enlightening session from Surah Hujurat. Fatma, you can go for the first question.
Assalamu alaikum. My question is regarding tayammum. So in my house, I have like marble floor, carpet, and then I have a lawn outside. Is it like absolutely necessary for me to like put my hands on the floor, carpet, or lawn, or I can do it on a table or wall as well? Because I don't feel that, you know, the floor, carpet, or the ground outside is clean. So what's the alternative?
The Quran says, "Tayammamu sa'idan tayyiba." Any pure surface would suffice. It could be your tabletop, it could be your wall, it could be any surface. So as long as it is a clean surface, that is absolutely fine. So you can just do tayammum from any clean surface, because the words of the Quran is "Fatayammamu sa'idan tayyiban." The word sa'id, although refers to mud or clay, but here the reference is to a surface, anything which is outside. I mean, it appears as an outside structure. So it could be a wall, it could be a surface of your table, it could be your the outer surface of your cupboards, or anything like that, as long as they are reasonably pure. Of course, that there's no dirt on them.
Muhammad Asif Gumrah, you can go for your question now.
Jazakallah, Dr. Saab. Very strong message. My question is that of being an Islamic society, we have so much Islamic culture, so many institutions, so many scholars. Still, we fail to entail that characteristic in our society. Where we failed to build the character?
I think our educational system has not done justice with this, and I would have always given this example of the Japanese system of education, in which the first 10 years, or even some, I think that until their own high school, they have this program of character development, in which morally sound behavior is highlighted, and the children are made to go through certain activities which sharpen their morality, which make them realize that at the end of the day, it is your sympathy, your kindness, your stature as a human being, which is the real thing which counts in the eyes. Even though they are a godless society, but still to them, these human traits, developing these human traits is of utmost importance. So I think our educational system should give a lot of attention in the earliest years of child's development. Of course, needless to say that mothers should also chip in, but
Yeah.
as they enter school, moral development, character building should be done through activity-based lessons in which people are or children are made to go through certain practical activities. I always give this example that in the Japanese system, for example, to teach responsibility to children, they would give them typically a seed and some manure and some mud and a flower pot, and they would ask the child to look after the seed, water it, and plant it in the sunlight, so that it's like attending to your to something which, and you are responsible for the growth of that, and this teaches them responsibility. Similarly, they would give them these tasks that you have to help your father and mother, for example, at the end of the day when you shut down your house, you are the one who's going to close the lights, or you are the one who's going to shut the door. So they make them go through these personality development exercises, which imperceptibly make strong in this area. So I think that we should adapt in our own system through certain. We can have certain changes as well, add certain changes, but the best way to teach morality, in my humble view, is through this activity-based learning series. And if we are able to do it let's say even for 3 or 4 years in the primary or the upper primary classes, I dare say that inshallah the crop we were going to reap would be far superior in their character and their personalities.
Yeah, it's not difficult to implement. I mean, we have the model, we have the teaching model system in the world which has been practiced. Whether it's a godless society, doesn't matter. Moral values are the same. So why don't we have an educationalist and the Islamic scholar get together and devise a program for our need and do that? It is absolutely easily doable thing. That's what my concern, and
Yes, I think it's more of I mean, how concerned you are, how passionate you are about this. It seems that because it's a huge task and it has to be done at the national level, and only a government can do it. But if the government is not paying attention, then all that we can do is that light our own small candles wherever we are able to conduct such sessions, and regularly try to educate people maybe who are in our own homes, our own children, our nieces and nephews, and our circle of friends who have children. I think this is a place to start off, instead of waiting for the government or a large-scale movement or a campaign to begin. We should begin from our own homes, from our own acquaintances as much as we can, and try to move forward. I think if we light a small candle, then at least the darkness which surrounds our own houses or our own homes might go away.
Inshallah. Jazakallah.
Thank you. Rafia Khwaja, you can ask your question now.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. Dr. Shehzad, lately I've read from a lot of Islamic scholars, including some scholars of Mawrid, who say that the ayat which gives permission for a Muslim man to marry a woman from Ahl Kitab is equally applicable to a Muslim woman marrying a man from Ahl Kitab, as long as both of them are chaste. So I wanted to know, what are your views regarding this, please?
I think that I would not agree with this. I would not even agree with today men marrying the people of the book, women from among the people of the book, because if you study the Quran, the issue which is discussed is that monotheism and Tawheed is of utmost importance. So the basic directive in this regard is La tankihul mushrikat hatta yu'minna, that do not marry idolatrous women unless they profess faith. This is the express and the basic directive which the Quran has, that no idolatry should be tolerated. And in the land of Arabia, once religion reigned supreme, once the traditions and culture or cultural traditions of Islam reigned supreme, this window was slightly given. I mean, some shadow of convenience, and it was a small portion of it was lifted, and accommodation was made that, well, yes, if you would like to, you can marry from among the people of the book, the women from the people of the book, because in all probability, in the situation in which was this permission was given, was that these women would, in these circumstances, would be later on even induced to accept Islam, and if they are not, if they would not accept Islam, then the children they would raise would be highly under the influence of Islamic traditions, because it was right at the end of the Prophet's career when these verses were revealed. And it was said that Al-Yawm, this is the day when Islam is now all over Arabia, and the status which husbands occupy in as a family is that they are the head of the family, and in such circumstances, it is much more in consonance to the fact that the children who would be raised would follow their fathers in a way that they'll become strong practicing Muslims. So I would say that this was marriage with the women of the people of the book was given in these circumstances. Today, I do no longer find these circumstances in any non-Muslim country. So in my personal opinion, marrying a woman, even from the people of the book, Muslims marrying them, even that should be, is not something which should be easily acceptable, because I said the directive was actually given in circumstances in which Islam reigned supreme. Its cultural traditions, its social traditions were so strongly rooted in an area. Today, this is you can hardly find this in any part of the world. So if you ask me, I would not even go and allow this for men marrying women, let alone women marrying men from the people of the book. And as far as people are concerned who think that the Quran does allow women to marry from among the people of the book, this I would not agree with them, because it's the other way around. The prohibition is ultimate for everyone. Just for a short concession, it has been opened. The door has been opened to marry Muslim outside Islam, to marry people of the book, women from the people of the book, and that too in circumstances when Islam prevailed. In the absence of that, I would say that even this small shutter stands closed, and Muslims should not even look beyond marrying them. And the reason I say this is that the importance of the creed of monotheism. This is so central to the Islamic thought that even amongst Muslims, we have to find people who are not deviant monotheists. So we have Muslims who profess to monotheism, but they still indulge in polytheistic practices. So such is the strict nature of the understanding of Tawheed, that personally I am extremely strict that monotheism should be there in the spouses, because this is the ultimate of religion, and it in no circumstances can or should it be sacrificed.
Shehzad Sahab, Dr. Khalid Zahir was asked this question, and I heard him say that he had not changed his views, and he felt that this ayat applies equally to both sides. And someone mentioned to me, I haven't heard it myself, that Ghamidi Saab also tends to agree. But Khalid Saab, I heard personally in a program. So that's why I was just wondering whether there was a change of thinking among the scholars, or is it just their personal opinions which have changed?
Well, I'm not sure about Dr. Khalid Zahir, because I haven't heard his view on this issue, but I can tell you that my teacher, or our teacher, Javed Ghamidi, what I have described is absolutely something which I have discussed with him just recently, and I think that what I've said here, to the best of my competence and knowledge, reflects what he says, and this is also what he has written in his book Mizan. So I think that you might as well take a look at that as well.
Thank you. Ahmed, you can have your question now.
Can we recite only one surah in the whole namaz, in the whole prayer?
You mean that you repeat the same surah in the second rakat?
Yes, sir. Exactly.
That is fine. You can do that. Although it is recommended that you learn other surahs also, so that your own focus and attention increases, because if you start reading the same surah again and again, not only is the fact that at times your attention is compromised, but also As a general rule, it's always good to have a variety of the Quranic surahs in our mind so that we can attach ourselves. But yes, if there is a problem or if there is some issue, then yes, if you do recite the same surah in both rakats, it's fine.
So second question is that what is the importance of sequence, making surahs in sequence during the whole namaz?
In sequence, you mean? This is something which is your own prerogative. There is no restriction by the Sharia. If you are reading them out of sequence, it is fine. If you don't read them, it is equally fine. There is no such prohibition or even recommendation in the Quran or anywhere which tells us that in our prayer we need to read the surahs in the same sequence as they are found in the Quran.
Adil Qureshi, you can go now.
Ji, Dr. Sir.
So,
Dr. Sir, why does it say that men should not make fun of other men and women should not make fun of other women? Is it because usually predominantly the gatherings that they used to have were not mixed gatherings where men and women were together, or men did not usually used to make fun of women? Obviously, a man making fun of women and a woman making fun of a man is equally forbidden, I would imagine. But why does the Quran use this way to describe this?
Well, actually, I think the answer to this question lies in the cultural norms of that era, in which generally men and women would not indulge in this the way we perhaps do today in our own societies, and women would make fun of women and men would make fun of men. This was something very, very common. But this doesn't mean that if men start making fun of women or women start making fun of men, then this does not lie in the purview of this verse or this directive. It is equally important that this should be abstained from as well. It is just that in the verse, women are specially addressed and men are specially addressed, because what happens is that because belong to the same gender, at times the remarks that you pass and times the comments that you make, they are more akin and they're more close to certain things which women and women have in common and men have in common. But again, as I said, this is purely a cultural thing or a particular setting. It does not at all mean that the what is not mentioned is not implied.
Okay, Dania, you can have your question now.
So my question is with respect to the first question. I mean, it's a follow-up question that is about character building in the education system of Pakistan. But when we talk about educating our child or children or kids in the education system here in Pakistan, most of the parents and the teachers, or you can say the education system, is mainly concerned about the tajweed and tilawat of Quran rather than its real understanding. When we take our children's age into consideration, as it's the time of their brain or personality development, my question is, which is more important to work on? I mean, which age is best when we take, with respect to children, work on their moral values or character building? Or you can say we should work on their moral values, or we should focus more on वो कुरान की जो छोटी छोटी चीजें हैं, ज़ेर ज़बर पेश की जो गलतियां हैं, बच्चों के किसके ऊपर काम ज्यादा होना चाहिए, या both are equally important?
See, reading the Quran is also, it has a separate importance of that they are fluent in their language, and it is best that they learn and understand the language. That's another thing. But when I say morality, it should be ingrained in them. Then the way to do it is through the Quran. I mean, when you teach morality, of course, one of the ways that I just suggested is through that activity-based learning. But at the same time, educating them on the moral verses of the Quran, and some of the verses that we just studied today, for example, and have been studying in the last sessions, all relate to moral development. So making them go through these activities, as well as making them read instead of the whole Quran. First, make them read a selection of the moral and ethical principles and lessons that they can draw from the Quran. That should be their first lesson from the Quran, and this could start at a very early age. And thus you'll find books like Quran for children or Hadith for children, and a lot of these books I have seen, they're doing a good job. The only thing is that they are underutilized, and we need to not only use these books in our curriculum at a very early age, but as I said, more importantly, induct the system of activity-based learning at a very early age, in which children, it becomes a habit of the children. I mean, even before they realize what they're doing, which they will do once they become mature and are aware of good and evil, even before that, it's like making something a tradition in a way that when they actually realize what they're doing, they have already developed a habit of that. So developing a habit of these things should start off very early. And needless to say that this cannot work unless the parents themselves are following all these principles. You just cannot expect your children to be morally sound if you yourselves, are hopeless in character and personality, because they are going to notice you at home. And if you are not up to the standard or up to the mark, you just cannot expect your children to follow you. So it's equally important that the atmosphere and the environment, which includes teachers and parents, they should have the same character that we would like to instill in the children. And at the same time, the methodology of this teaching should be, on the one hand, leading by example. When the child sees their teachers and their parents doing something good, of course, it has an impact. And at the same time, making them pass through these activity-based learning exercises, which are so effective. They are so impactful, because I have been conducting these sessions, and I can see the results among students, and it's simply amazing. It's just that perhaps we are not giving enough attention to this methodology of inculcating character development.
Dr. Sahab, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
You just mentioned there you had some sessions on this subject, teaching kids, the manners, and not to joke about other children. Is there a recording, or I could look at it, or I could show my children?
Yes, there are recordings, but you have to search for them, because I have been doing these sessions in Australia, in Canada, in the US and the UK, and there are certain sessions which were done in a manner that basically lectures were given. So that I'm not referring to, but there were another type of sessions which were given, in which these activities were given to children, and they were recorded, if I remember. I distinctly remember these sessions being conducted in Melbourne and in Brisbane in Australia, I think 4 or 5 years ago, and they were recorded. But you would need to search for their recordings on YouTube, and I think some of our people here might be able to help you.
Yeah, that will really help, because rather than, I heard it, what you said.
I just remembered one thing, that actually I've written a book on this as well, and it is called Quranic workshops through what was it called? Quranic workshops through activity-based learning. So there is a book which I wrote. You can, wherever you are, you will be able to find that book, and there's an instructor's guide to this book as well. So it's like a workbook which has those activity-based exercises. And I conducted those sessions in various places for many years, and then I actually compiled them so that any person who would like to conduct those sessions, and there is an instructor's guide as well. So I think the name was Quranic workshops through activity-based learning or something, and an instructor's guide. There were 15 lessons in that, and 15.
Mashallah.
So I think that you'll find it wherever you are from our website.
Could someone point us more clearly? Oh yeah, somebody wrote a.
Dr. Shehzad, I found a book, Lessons on Character Building, from your website, and I believe
that's a different book.
Okay.
This is called Quranic workshops on character building. So it's the word workshop is a part of the title. So it is a slightly bigger book, which it's like a workbook. It's like when you open it, you have exercises. So it's like worksheets being assembled, and then you have an instructor's guide. So these are two separate books, and I think they are called Quranic workshops on character building, because I published this, I think, about 7 or 8 years ago. So I'm forgetting the exact name. I think it's something like Quranic workshops on.
Are they on your website? www.shehzadsaleem.com.
It should be there, and there is an instructor's guide to it, so that if any person would like to conduct it, He just needs to read that guide and he can do it himself with the young ones.
Okay, Shehzad, we have a question here. Can we give zakah and sadaqah to non-Muslims if they are poor or needy?
Absolutely, yes. So zakat and sadaqat in the times of the Prophet, they were all collected in the public treasury, which was the Baitul Mal, and they were dispensed for the public good without any discrimination between who they were given to. So today, whether it's a person who is amongst Muslims or non-Muslims of any religion, the bottom line here is the need of that person. Any person in need is eligible to receive your zakat or sadaqat. So any person in need, regardless of his faith.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. That's the end of the lineup of the questions for today.
Okay, so inshallah we'll see each other tomorrow.